For our second talk, but on the line, we're taking a closer look at some of the legislation moving through the Roundhouse targeting child welfare issues. Now, right now, lawmakers are considering a bill that would create an outside office to oversee Children, Youth, and Families Department. House Bill 11 would create an independent office with a head child advocate, that's interesting, to oversee and investigate complaints made against CYFD. Now, although the bill has seen bipartisan approval, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has spoken out against it, saying it would create a confrontational relationship between two government offices. That never happens. Wait a minute. Given the problems we've had, Kathy, with CYFD, the early strokes here, an ombudsman basically, someone who could look and say, you know, a final word to say we need to do better here. Is this on the right track to you for CYFD?
I think that it is on the right track, and I also see the governor's point if she's talking about things being, you know, further bottlenecked in trying to figure out what happens with, you know, where a child is going to wind up, where's the best place for them to wind up. You know, what we're seeing, and I know that the frustration is that we are 50th in child well-being again. And that, you know, there are all of these very high-profile cases that, you know, are poorly handled. There are just as many that are done well, you know, so there are a lot of issues in the department, and I think that we have to look at, you know, how the department is structured. I might want to look at that more than having an ombudsman to say, you know, should we have child welfare and juvenile detention in the same department? You know, maybe the department is too big.
Interesting point there.
Is what I might say.
Senator, interestingly, House Bill 11 is sponsored by 5 Democrats. I'm not sure if that makes a big difference, but there is bipartisan support for reform. It's just the how is difficult. Are you seeing a difference here between Republicans and Democrats, how they want to attack CYFD? And is the proposal Republican friendly? The governor's not quite for it. Does that make it automatically something Republicans support?
Well, no,
I'm being a wise guy, certainly.
Yeah,
but
I know, and I agree. No, it doesn't automatically make Republicans for it. I think, and I didn't do this little research, but if you go back and look, it's just like the crime bills. This very same bills have been being introduced for 10 years now by Bill Ream. So it's just who decided to be the lead sponsor. And I think that may be more a case here of it's not that the ideas are not shared by both groups. It's just that you don't get to have any credit for it. So, which could be that. I mean, a lot of stuff happens that way. But the main thing I think is that they all recognize how disastrous this department is. And I think about it, I think about Mrs. King, Alice King, who helped put this together. And her heart and her mind, everything was in the right direction. And she would just, I can't imagine that she wouldn't be horrified, just horrified by what the way things are now. I like the idea of a separate entity, not an in-house entity. We've had several governors have out-of-state studies done, entities do studies and things like that. And immediately when Governor Martinez did it, the Dems said it was all wrong. When Mr. Richardson did it, the R said it was all wrong. And
the
so
year of the child, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've done that so often that. But someone that's operating, and as I recall, this would be within the Attorney General's office, not in the department. So they don't have a vested interest in one side or the other.
But you're the government person here. Does the governor have a point about two conflicting offices that way, even if it's
No. I mean, there have been fights between departments for years, and there were great ones when anytime when a new cabinet position is created, there's that territorial, you're taking my responsibility. There's always that. We may be nicer than that in public, but no, that goes on all the time.
Interesting. You're right. You're right, though. You're right.
That does not faze me.
That's right. What's interesting about the person to overlook this surge is Representative Tara Jaramillo. She's one of the co-sponsors. She told the Journal that 43 other states already have a similar independent office. 43. That's a pretty compelling number. we should just go there, right? I mean, you know.
Well, just because a lot of people are doing something
That's
doesn't
what I
make it a
mean,
good
right.
thing. But yeah, it has been a reasonably successful model that's been implemented around the country. Especially recently, folks are saying, "Oh, this is a way we can do this." And I think, in principle, that does resonate with me. I do wonder a little bit about there's a lot of different models to follow, and as I read the bill, this office would have the ability to write reports and get people together to talk, right? I'm not sure,
right.
like it doesn't, and the power to refer it out to other agencies,
point,
right?
yeah.
I think other states, they've said, given a lot more power and said, no, you have the ability to, take agency X to court to try to enforce
That's
X, Y, or Z. And I think, from I'm a lawyer, so you take it with a grain of salt, but I think that might be a more effective model rather than this, another agency that is gonna generate reports.
Interesting point there.
But it may be
Please.
the only step we can get right now.
Right.
That's right.
And,
You
yeah.
can see us kind of sneaking
right.
up on it,
Yeah.
isn't it? Reform is needed here.
I mean,
but-
there's nothing wrong with a report,
Right.
but I mean, I do like,
Right. Interesting, guys. Another bill, Kathy, House Bill 10 would require CYFD to be more transparent with their information and cooperative with investigative entities, including the police, prospective adoptive parents. We're not doing that now? Once again, it's one of those things.
Common sense stuff, right?
We need a bill for this?
We need a bill for this. I wonder why we need a bill for it, and I think it goes back to how the department is run, and what are do we have the courage to say that there are some things that are about how the department is administered, and I am going to just keep saying that this department is huge,
Right.
and I also don't want to deny the fact that of course they're suffering, as many other organizations are suffering from staffing issues, and being able to hire good staff who are going to be able to be retained. They do have very high caseloads, but is the answer to have, some other entity that is looking into it? I think the answer is that we had to get in there and, start going through to see where are the real disconnects, in behavioral health and, in child protective services, and what are the things that we're seeing, and having a report to say that that was bad. It's like, well, yeah, we know that.
That's right.
We
see
already
the
know
outcome,
that.
right,
So,
exactly.
but what do we do about the processes that are in place? So maybe the report's going to say you need to change these things. I think we already know that.
I'm interested where the nexus is between law enforcement and what CYFD's mission is, guys, because at some point someone has to show up at the front door. And it's with someone with a badge and say, we need to rectify the situation, Senator. It's a huge difficulty, but I do have one last question. Again,
and can I just say that there's an
please.
assessment
Yeah.
that where that individual who needs to show up at the door is going to say, yeah, I need to remove this child
That's
from
right.
the house.
That's in the CARA
Right.
business is
Yeah.
a big part of that.
Yeah,
Exactly
yeah.
right. We're down to crunch time. Is there enough time to get something like this done? I mean, this is another one of my pet peeves about a part-time legislature. This is very technical and involved.
One of the things I'm very sure of, because I've seen it happen, both as a lobbyist and as a senator, is if the Speaker of the House and the President pro tem and Majority Leader in the Senate want it to happen, it'll happen.
That's right. That's
So
right.
it's a matter of will more than it is time.
It's an interesting point. I think there is a lot of will, but somehow I don't know, it just doesn't feel like the will is quite there. So we'll have to think about that. Thank you once again to our line opinion panelists. We'll be back here at the table once more to talk about legislation aimed at cracking down on retail crime. That's a big issue here.